Hey everybody, welcome back to my gushing over Pokemon Winds and Waves series. This has become a full-blown series apparently. Today we're going to be talking about the leaks that have come out since the games were initially announced. I'm not going to cover every single leak just because that would be impossible. There's so many supposed leaks out there. And here's the thing, I don't actually trust leaks, it's just these ones supposedly come from some reputable sources that have previously proven true in the past. I don't know how they get this information. I don't know who hacked what or who said what to whom and who has friends in what places. I'm not a leaker. I don't care for leaks. I'm just going through it because some of the information is kind of exciting, some of it not so much. But actually, no, I'm going to talk about it's all exciting. It's all Pokemon news. So it should be worth noting that all of this is subject to change. It's right now everything we have been, every leak should be taken with a massive, massive garganagle sized pile of salt. I don't buy any rumor until it actually is revealed to be true, so I won't be pushing any of this is true, but I do want to share what's been leaked, just in case anyone would like me to cover that, because I think it could be just a fun way to pass 20 minutes. Um, Obviously, if you don't want me to do that, feel free to click off the video. There's the three others that I went over previously. I went over, the trailer, the main website, and I also had a look at the Terror leak for information to see if there's anything we could glean from it. The Terror leak in this video are kind of spoilery because I suspect some of this is going to be in the final game, but not all of it. We'll see. But as you can see, this is a leak tracker from Pokeos.com if you want to go have a look yourself. It's worth noting that one of the first things that was revealed, or not one of the first things, one of the most recent things at the time of recording that people are saying is true is that there is apparently going to be at least 300 new Pokemon. Now, this doesn't take alternate forms into account. So, if a Pokemon has, for example, a day form and a night form, and they're counted as the same Pokemon, that doesn't take into account. This isn't actually. I should also clarify. This doesn't inherit. There are 307 slots, aka there are 307 Pokemon, species, individual species. Where a species changes form, but it doesn't affect gameplay, like the male and female forms of certain Pokemon, those aren't considered specifically. Those aren't given their own entries in when Pokemon does their coding. But when it comes to Pokemon whose forms are given different like stats, abilities, appearances, and whatnot, they have a tendency to get they do get their own forms. So for example, the two Mousehole forms, the family of three, family of four, those are not considered to be, they do not occupy their own slots, because the difference is purely visual, whereas the Phantom and Gorgeist families, they do get four different slots per each species, because you've got the four sizes. You've got the small, medium, large, jumbo size, and each of them has different stats and plays differently in gameplay. So they're considered separate species from a back end point of view. So this could be 307 completely new Pokemon. I doubt it. It's more likely to be, I would say, around the 250, 275 marker if we're assuming some of these are forms. And obviously, if a Pokemon's form, if there are enough Pokemon with new forms, it could be easily just 150 new Pokemon. Just most of them, or several of them, have several forms. But at this point, we can't really say for certain. There's nothing to say we definitely have 300 new Pokemon coming out. And there is the point as well. This may not mean that there are 307 Pokemon in the initial game. It could be there are going to be like 100 Pokemon initially, then 100 Pokemon in some DLC, and then a further wave of DLC with 100 Pokemon in it. But we'll see, we'll see. There's no guarantee either way. This is all rumor, remember, so everything in this video should be taken with a pinch of salt. We're gonna go through each of the rumored Pokemon supposedly that's been revealed, and we'll just do a little talk about them. Starting off, this was not so much a rumor. Like, the starters, as you know, always evolve twice. Like, there's never been a variation on that. We sometimes get branching evolutions with like alternate forms. Sometimes we get mega evolutions. But no, with Browse, you can see very clearly it's going to get 2 stages. The rumor is, however, that its final form will be grass ground type, which would be interesting. Instantly brings to mind Torterra, which is already a slow, bulky, grass ground type Pokemon. This could very easily become a fast ground grass type Pokemon, which would be really cool. Assuming it is based on coffee beans, though, I would have gone for grass electric personally, but that's just me. Excuse me, grass ground's still a fine type, though. Just a massive weakness to ice. Pombon, as we see, the rumor is this will eventually evolve into a fire and fairy type. And I have also heard that apparently it stays a quadruped the entire way, but it gets fluffier as it goes along. Pokemon starters tend to... How do I explain this? When a Pokemon starter evolves, the middle stage usually looks like a grown-up version of the previous stage, but then the final stage will often enough just have something that's completely new or sets it apart from the previous stage. Like, if you look at basically every fire-type line, even like the quadrupeds become bipeds eventually. And then, they usually gain some fantastical feature that sets them up for being a final evolution. Pombon's evolution being fairy type, that would be really interesting, because that would be our first ever fire fairy type in the franchise, which would be really fun. The trick is, if that means we're getting a fire fairy starter, that almost certainly means we're getting a fire fairy non-starter or a legendary or a mythical or something, because whenever Pokemon introduces a new type combination like this, they like to do 2 or 3 variations on the same idea, so like the same concept, so to speak. Good, Soundwave is running in the background, sorry, sometimes if I minimize Soundwave, which is this line at the top, it vanishes, so I have to keep it open but in the background. So yeah, Fire Fairy, really good type combo if it ends up being true, because that would mean that effectively nothing can wall this. There's very few type combos that could feasibly wall this. Poison Water being the kind of the only one that springs to mind right now. I'm sure there are others, but that's the main one. Gekwa, which is probably the one I'm leaning towards the most, supposedly is going to become a water psychic type. I can kind of see it. The pink eyes give it that sort of mystical, like gecko appearance, and pink is often associated with the type, as you can see in the symbol. Also, it likes to shoot balls of water from its tail, which that just sounds like bubbles to me. There's a lot of starters that will start off using things like Bubble and Bubble Beam as their initial water type attacks, and then they'll switch over to Water Gun and Hydro Pump for their final form, just because bubbles are fine, but if you really want to deal damage, pressurized jets of water is where it's at. As Squirtle, Wartortle, Blastoise, that's how that works. Also, Gekko is supposed to be very intelligent, which very much means that if they decide to capitalize on the intelligence as part of the design, it's definitely going to become Psychic type, because that's the intelligent type. All the smartest Pokemon are Psychic type. Not to say that there are no unintelligent Pokemon or other types, but Psychics tends to be the one that, because you've got to have a big brain to be Psychic. Next up is Windy Chew and Wavy Chew. I don't know if these are supposed to be Pokemon forms. I don't think so. I think these are just NPCs. Like, yeah, technically they're forms of Pikachu, but then so's Pikachu, and I don't expect Pikachu to be playable in the new games. Windy Chew and Wavy Chew are almost certainly just NPCs, or at the very least they have something in the background that ties them to like the legendary Pokemon. I think that's something that was rumored for a while. And I'm pretty sure that's probably true. I think that one we can probably agree is almost certainly true. I'll be shocked if it isn't, put it that way, which is hilarious because these guys are almost certainly electric type. Next up, we have Iwark. Now, if you don't know, Iwark is Onyx's Japanese name. And if you listen to it in the anime, it actually makes that sound. It goes, "Argh." And Iwark 2 suggests that there's a brand new evolution for Onyx, similar to how Scyther very recently became the recipient of a branched evolution, which makes it the first Pokemon, I think, since Gloom to officially receive a proper branched evolution. I know there are two. I know Snorunt and Curly can also branch their evolution, but they're based on gender. Whereas Scyther's isn't based on gender, so this one would be pretty cool. We don't know what type it's going to be. Yeah, I don't know. I can see it being so my guess is because in the case of Scyther drops the flying type and becomes either Scissor, which is Bug Steel, or it becomes Cleaver, which is Bug Rock. Sorry. So Onyx being Rock Ground and then becomes Steel Ground, I very much suspect it'll keep the ground typing and then become something else. Depending on how it goes. They could capitalize on the draconic aspects of its appearance and turn it into a full-on serpent dragon. So I could see Dragon Ground being its typing, or maybe even perhaps Water Ground if they decide that Onyx now needs to learn to swim, apparently. Sea snakes are a thing, so Water Ground is 100% possible. Hell, they could even go Water Rock with it, because I don't think we have many of them. At least, comparatively speaking, I'm sure we have a lot in the in other games, but we haven't had any since Gen 5 and Gen 1, respectively. I think Corsola is the only other one. But it could be fun to see an Onyx evolution that isn't Steelix, just because Steelix is fun, Steelix is great, but I really wish we had something other than Steelix to evolve into. Because Onyx is cool, and I wish it got a little more love, but hey, here's hoping. Next up, Delville 2. This is apparently... So Delville is Houndour, which is a Gen 2 Dark Fire type Pokemon, and evolves into Houndoom. Houndoom back in X and Y, at least I think it was X and Y. Houndoom got a Mega Evolution, which is a very strange Mega Evolution as well, because it kind of amps up the Devil Dog aspects, and it turns it into it gains solar power, so in Sun, its moves suddenly become more powerful at the cost of some HP. Houndoom is not a good Pokemon. Like, I like Houndoom, don't get me wrong, Houndoom's cool, but I wouldn't call it a good Pokemon. It's kind of like Steelix. Steelix is fun, but I won't call it good, you know? So, we have a potential alternate evolution for a Houndour. This is the one I'm a little confused about, because if we assume, like, Houndour and Houndoom, they're Dark and Fire type. Now, in the Alola games, Cubone is a ground type and then evolves into Marowak, which is a Ghost Fire type. So this Pokemon will almost certainly change both typings, I think. I don't think it'll become Dark Fairy or anything like that, but it may gain the Fairy type if it gains something else. This might be our other. This might be the other Fairy Fire type that I mentioned earlier, with Pombon's evolution being the other one. I can certainly see that, especially if they sort of went more into the fire aspect rather than the devilish aspect. Um, but I mean, Houndoom's fine as it is. I don't know why. A lot of people seem to think it'll become a water dark type, which I can kind of see, but like, I don't know that dogs and water are really the sort of thing that mix very often. A lot of people figured that Hisuian, Growlithe, and Arcanine were going to be water type for some reason. I don't know why. Um, Not every Pokemon that gets, a regional form is going to flip its type, so to speak. This could very easily just become like, I don't know, Dark Poison or Dark Ice. It could, because we know from the Terra League video that there's several desert areas and there's a bunch of lava areas, so there should be plenty of room for fire types. Maybe it keeps the fire type, and I don't know. Maybe it just becomes pure fire. We don't know. Weirder things have happened. But I'm looking forward to seeing how it works. I can't wait to discover this Pokemon for myself. This one's kind of a weird one. Did we get a type on the other one? No, we didn't. So Yatomare is the Japanese name for Salandit. Now, if you're not familiar, Salandit is a fire poison type lizard Pokemon that was introduced in Gen 8, I think it was, whichever one Alola was. And it evolved, the females only would evolve into Salandit's evolution, which was Salazzle. Salandit and Salazzle share the typing of fire poison, and they also have the unique ability Corrosive. Corrosive allows them to poison, steel, and poison types who are normally immune. I think it bypasses immunity, but don't quote me on that because I can't remember off the top of my head. But the idea is you can use Toxic to poison a steel type that normally wouldn't have to worry about it. It's one of those abilities where it kind of feels like more Pokemon could use it. Like, why doesn't Muck have it, for example? But that's besides the point. So Salandit's Pokedex entry mentions that the female Pokemon use pheromones to control groups of males and effectively create a reverse harem. The idea being that they then control it and have them go out and fetch food for the female. I don't know what this is based on. I assume there's like a lizard or a bird that does something in the wild, and that's what they do. And I don't think there's a specific species that does this. It could just genuinely be an idea they had where they were like, let's make an insect ecology like an anthill or a beehive, but we'll base it on lizards for some reason. So that's weird. But supposedly the new evolution is a branch evolution. It's gonna be Poison Dragon. Maybe this is just me, but Poison Dragon seems to be becoming more and more common these days. The first one was way back in X and Y, and then there seems to have been at least one per generation, which is a bit bizarre. Poison Dragon's a fine typing. There's nothing wrong with it, especially if you have fire coverage, which I imagine they will, because the original is fire and poison. What I also suspect is going to happen, and there's no basis for this, is that in the original Alola games, the male version is said to use all its energy serving the female, so it can't actually evolve, so implying that it does have an evolutionary line, but we never get to see it. So based on that, I fully expect that the male is the one that's going to evolve this time. And to really set the contrast, I think what will probably end up happening is the Poison Dragon male will actually be a lone hunter to sort of offset what the females do, because the females, they have their reverse harem, for lack of better phrasing, and then, so the male becoming a lone hunter, or it could be like lions where they're in packs, like the females follow the lone male, but there's only one male per pack. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. I don't know if it's gonna happen. But supposedly this is our Komodo dragon that we're getting at long last, which, I'm excited for. I like Komodo dragons not up close. I like them from a distance, preferably the other side of the planet. Next up, this is probably the most interesting one of the lot. Um, Monozu 3. So Monozu is Dino, which is the evolution of Zweilous. Sorry, no, Dino evolves into Zweilous. So if you don't know, Dino is a Dragon Dark type Pokemon that was introduced in Gen 5. Now, I find this odd because Hydreigon just got a Paradox version of itself in Scarlet and Violet, which is Iron Jugulus, I want to say. They made a word up for that one. I don't know why, when Jugular was right there. But Iron Jugulus is a dark flying type Pokemon. So this guy, assuming this is meant to be like forming a triad with those two, I can kind of see it going, dragon flying or maybe some other combination. Like, I don't know what they would do. Zweilous is a violent, brutal Pokemon. The dark dragon type is meant to reference that. I get the impression that they think of Dark Dragon as the closest thing to a proper malicious Pokemon. Hence, there's only really two Pokemon with that typing. But we could see, I don't know, it could be Dragon Water, given that we're looking at a region with a heavy emphasis on, flying and swimming. It could also be Flying Dragon, because I can see it, gaining real wings as opposed to those six, leathery talon things that it has and flying around. They could also, depending on how they're thinking about it, they might turn it into a Dragon Steel type and have it be like the tank. Because if you don't know, Hydreigon's original premise was that it was going to be a sort of more mechanical tank-like Pokemon. So I can absolutely see them going down that route with it. And we get some kind of monstrous tank of some kind. That'd be really fun. I've always wanted to see what that looks like, so seeing an official version could be what we're after here. Next up, we have the flying satyr fish. Satyr? I don't know. So apparently this was meant to be a flying water type, presumably in Pokemon Gold and Silver. It was a it's. I'm hoping this is obvious, but it's a literal flying fish Pokemon. It's a fish with two bird-like wings and then two weird-looking bird legs coming out the bottom. Yeah, this is a bizarre Pokemon design, to say the very least, but it's also right up there with exactly what I would think of if I was to make a flying fish Pokemon. So I don't know, maybe I'm being too harsh, but I can certainly see them taking this and then doing something with it. I think what will probably end up happening is they'll do this and then they'll, I don't know. They say apparently this concept is being revisited. So I don't think it's gonna look exactly like this. Maybe they do like a regional Magikarp with wings instead of those things that it has, those fins it has. But I kind of think a more original flying fish Pokemon would be really cool. And we haven't had a new water flying type in a while, so it would be kind of nice to get a new one of those. There was at one point one every generation up until about Gen 6 or 7. And this could be a nice take on the concept, just a fish with literal wings. Real flying fish don't actually have wings. They glide in and out of the water, and I think the concept for that was ultimately used for Mantine, or Mantine, or however you want to freaking say it. But although there was supposed to be two separate concepts, so maybe they combine the two aspects and we're like, okay, yeah, we'll take the rare, we'll give it proper wings, and then we'll make it flying type. And this guy was scrapped because they were like, we don't want two water flying types in the same generation for some reason. Next up, we have an electric bat. Yeah. Excuse me. We have no idea what this is supposed to be. This apparently was a very recent suggestion. Now, Electric Pokemon, generally speaking, like to absorb electricity either by feeding on it, like with Voltorb and Magnemite, or they like to just generate it within their bodies, such as Pikachu and Jolteon. An electric bat Pokemon would be interesting. I can see it hanging onto power lines and then draining them like a vampire bat would. That'd be a really cool concept for an electric bat Pokemon. I think it would be really interesting as well, just to see if the I would be interested to see if this evolves, because so far we've got Zubat that evolves eventually into Crobat, and then we've got Woobat which evolves into Swoobat. I'd really prefer if they didn't call it, if they took the word bat and then didn't put it in the name, like call it Swoop Charge or something. I don't know. I'm no good with names. Um, but yeah, an electric bat is apparently coming, so that's interesting. Next up, we have an unverified leak. I mean, they're all unverified, but this one especially. Um, so a Malio bird, and then a pirate with a wooden leg. Basically, the idea is going to be that there's some kind of bird based on the Malio, and it has pirate themed features. So probably a peg leg, and the hat. I would say probably the most prominent features in that photo. So I would assume that's what we're getting. Again, don't really know. Ultimately, don't really care until we actually see it. Next up, however, we have a kangaroo Pokemon, apparently. So there's a tree kangaroo, which is a type of marsupial specifically that lives in trees, alongside a kickboxer and a mountain peak. This implies that there's a tree kangaroo that perhaps it's grass fighting type, and it has a move set that's focused primarily around kicking. And then to evolve it, maybe you have to take it up a mountain, similar to what Crabrawler has to do. Alternatively, it could imply that it is just really good at climbing in general, so it is constantly like climbing up cliff faces. It could be climbing up mountainsides and then kicks to defend itself. I think a kangaroo is well overdue, like a proper one. I know Kangaskhan is meant to invoke the same idea, but that's a kaiju. That's not a proper kangaroo. We've needed Gen 9 gave us a lot of Pokemon that I think we were overdue for, like a flamingo and a stork and a dolphin. A kangaroo seemed like the only thing they were really missing from like the base animal set, if you like. But this is getting there. If assuming this is true, then yeah, tree kangaroo we're looking forward to. Next up, Komodo 1. So this is actually a 3-stage evolution that was supposedly leaked. So we got a Komodo dragon, and then another Komodo dragon, and then a classical dragon, which appears to be a fully evolved Komodo dragon with wings and stuff. The fact that it's, I know that there's poison, and then because Komodos are extremely venomous, and it is as the text says, it becomes more. It's the world's largest lizard, so I wonder if they're gonna make it like a truly huge Pokemon, like sort of Wailord-esque in size, maybe not quite as big, but it would be really cool to see them, just these huge ass Pokemon. Maybe they live on a single island and they're isolated because they're just so dangerous. And I kind of hope, this is just a personal hope, I hope that when they fully evolve, instead of becoming like dragon and fire, dragon poison, I'm kind of hoping they become poison fire, just because I think that's a more interesting type. I also think that if we are getting a new dragon line that is, a 3-stage Komodo dragon line, I think this is our new pseudo legendary. Because for some reason, every pseudo legendary, barring Metagross and Tyranitar, have to be dragon type for some reason. Apparently Nintendo absolutely loves fearsome dragon Pokemon for some reason, so there has to be one every generation. Gen 5 almost didn't have Hydreigon. It was scrapped early on, and then Nintendo demanded they put in a 3-stage dragon line, so they brought the idea back, and, the rest is history, as they say. But the fact that we've got this leak so early on, assuming this is true, I'm going to say, yeah, this isn't probably our pseudo-legendary that we're looking at. even if we haven't got design or anything with typing. Um, and I know I said I hope it becomes poison fire. I suspect it's going to be a dragon type the whole way through. Because yeah, why wouldn't it be? Next up, an echidna with a picture of a sniper. I think that one's from, what's that game called? Yes, Anna from Overwatch. Oh, let me just scroll back down. Yeah, an echidna plus Anna from Overwatch, who was a sniper. I believe her bullets actually are like suction bullets, so they don't deal just like a hit point of damage. They hit and then they do a small amount of damage over a few seconds. And she's a tactical undercover invisibility using sniper character. Echidna with a long snout where it's kind of like a sniper rifle. That could be a really interesting concept. And they could even give it like the color change ability or some other camouflage based ability, allowing it to effectively disappear into the undergrowth. That'd be a really interesting idea. And with the spines, I could easily see them doing like a steel type with iron barbs, or perhaps. Um, yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking. They don't usually give steel types unusual abilities, though. Most steel types have the same basic range of abilities, with one or two exceptions. So if it is steel, I'm not exactly over the moon with what they could give it, but we'll see. Next up is a tapir. Yeah, so a tapir, if you don't know, it's a if you've seen Drowsy or Munna, basically they are based on tapirs. They're forest animals with like really short snouts. They kind of look like mini trunks. I don't remember if they're related to elephants or not, but I think they're closer to pigs than anything else. But I don't know. Um, but the two we've got at the moment, Drowsy and Munna, are Pokemon related to dreams. The image shows a Buddha statue of meditation, so perhaps this is the tapir that like meditates rather than eats dreams. Because Drowsy is very specifically mentioned as eating dreams, whereas Munna and Mashana have the capacity to reveal dreams. Um, which is interesting, but I kind of hope if we do get another tapir Pokemon, we kind of move away from the dream concept because it's been done twice now. I don't necessarily see a need to do it a third time. Maybe it combines meditation with daydreams instead of night dreams. That'd be kind of an amusing little idea, and it could have like, it could be similar to what's it called? It could be similar to that other poison, not poison, fighting psychic Pokemon, Meditite and Medicham. It could be like them where it meditates before attacking, but unlike them, it has like unawareness as ability because it's so deep in its trance it can't figure out what's going on. I can see that happening. Maybe that'd be the new dopey Pokemon along the lines of Quagsire. Next up is this odd one, which is a Moon Rabbit Pokemon with some sort of female motif. So it may be that this is I would assume this is a fairy type Pokemon based on the Moon Association. Um, Possibly fairy normal. It could just be another cute little rabbit Pokemon just to add to the list of cute little Pokemon that are out there. I don't think this is going to be Buneary or Lopunny coloured. I think this is just going to be its own thing. It might even be spherical like the moon. But I don't know. I'm kind of over the whole Moon Rabbit association because it kind of feels like every other rabbit we get has some association with the moon, and it's it feels like low hanging fruit at this point. Yeah. I don't know. Admittedly, I don't know of many other myths surrounding rabbits, so maybe I'm overreacting, but I feel like the moon rabbit thing has been done into the dirt, kind of like how Kitsune and Tanuki, to a lesser extent, have been done into the dirt. But then we get this interesting little tidbit. Supposedly, There is a tropical bird Pokemon with a male sun motif. Um, I can kind of see that. I can see it being like sun themed. Maybe when it turns a certain way, the beak lines up with its body, and the casque on its head, that red piece in the image, that could be like spiked up to represent sun rays. And it could be that these two actually form a duality. So it could be that the Moon Rabbit is in one version, and then you've got Sun in the other. Um, if I had to guess, I would say the Moon Rabbit would be in waves, and then the Sun would be in winds. The reason I think that is because the Sun is more closely associated with the sky, whereas the Moon is usually sort of more associated with the ocean. Even in science, where the Moon is responsible for the tides, I can certainly see that being a thing. Could be interesting to see, but we'll have to wait on that one because I'll have to wait on all of them. But I do find the concept fascinating, even if the Moon Rabbit's kind of been done to death at this point. If they mix it up a little bit, I'm excited. But yeah, let's wait and see on that one. Next up, this one is one of the first rumors that came out that's more legit. We So there's supposedly going to be a regional Psyduck farm. Um, so this is going to be an ice and psychic version of Psyduck, which possibly may be based on a platypus. Um, and it evolves one time supposedly into a brand new Pokemon, which is not Golduck. Which is, parallel to that would be most of the Galarian forms evolving into new Pokemon. But we haven't confirmed this, so I wouldn't put too much stock into that. What's interesting about Psyduck, from a background perspective, is that it basically was part of a 3-stage line at one point during early development of Red and Blue, and then they cut it down to 2. There's a lot of Pokemon like that where they suddenly just cut the line down or mix and match for some reason. But Psyduck in particular, for some reason, was cut down. Now, the image below that Psyduck shows that... let me see. So that second picture down below by Icy Boy shows 3, Psyduck Berserker Meowth mixes. I think that's supposed to mean that it's meant to have a 3-stage line rather than a 2-stage line. Which, if that's true, and it doesn't evolve into a regional Golduck form, that would mean it's the very first Pokemon to have it's the first regional variant ever to evolve twice into new Pokemon rather than evolving once into a brand new form. So that's really interesting. This guy reposted the image, which strengthens that. And then apparently one other guy says, so the ball guy who apparently is also reputable, says no, he doesn't believe it's true. So this one, maybe we take it with a little extra salt, but the Psyduck one may end up being fake. I think that's one of the ones we have to sort of really be careful around. This one is just confirming. This is just the next stage of the Psyduck Evo, which we're going to skip this because it's basically the exact same thing. Next up we have a bizarre one where Nincada is apparently getting a regional form or evolution. So someone was posting that Clamperl, who already has a branched evolution, could get a brand new forms or possibly evolutions in the new games. Now this guy was saying would take a look at Nincada's line as well. So Nincada is obviously impossible to say what this really means. Nincada could be getting a convergent species, a new evolution. It could get a regional variant. I'm not familiar with the insects of the region that this place is based on, so I don't know. Excuse me, I don't know what an Incada parallel would really look like. I mean, I can imagine a few things, but I don't want to. I don't want to speculate. The real question becomes, if it's not that and it becomes a branched evolution, does that mean we get like a branched evolution of Incada and then a new Shedinja? Like, do we get Ninjask and a Ninjask equivalent and a Shedinja equivalent, or do we just get a Ninjask and maybe we still get Shedinja as normal? That would be kind of wild if that was the case, because that would effectively mean that Shedinja was technically part of the end result of two potential evolutionary lines. Because the way it works is that when an Incada evolves into a Ninjask, if you have a spare slot on your team and you have a Pokeball spare, when Nincada evolves into Ninjask, the shed husk of Nincada will take on new life and become Shedinja, which is a very bizarre Pokemon, and I highly recommend you go look it up if you're not familiar with it. Shedinja won't appear, though, if your party's full or you don't have a Pokeball spare, so that's kind of amusing. But yeah, what I find really interesting is that assuming, let's say for the sake of argument, this is a regional Nincada. Does that mean, like I said, does that mean we're getting a regional Ninjask and a regional Shedinja, or just a Ninjask? It'll be, assuming this is true, then it'll be really interesting to find out what route they take with it. They might not even do that. They might just be like, yeah, no, you just get the Ninjask equivalent and that's it. You're all spoiled. But this doesn't, yeah, but we're not taking this as confirmation or anything. We're just saying, yeah, it might happen. This is, let me just go down. Yeah, so let's go back up. So this is this is being called Konetsu. I don't know if that's the full name, and I don't know what that really means. But this is related to the seed Pokemon, and I mentioned the seed Pokemon in a previous video because that's the one Pokemon out of the entirety of the 300 or so that I'm really excited for. So apparently it was originally going to have random or procedural forms and evolutions, changing depending on how the player trained it. It is an ambitious idea, and as the text notes, this might be difficult to implement. So the procedural parts of it may have been scrapped, but the seed Pokemon itself appears to have remained in some form. So the seed Pokemon is believed to be called Konetsu. The word Netsu could mean heat in Japanese, and also appears to be connected to the new battle mechanic previously referred to by fans and leakers as margin. And as you can see, we got this like weird image. Like in the background, we've got a Milcery, which is a Pokemon that can evolve into Alchemy. Alchemy very famously has about 60 stupid forms or something like that, because so the way you evolve a Milcery is you give it a sweet item to hold. So there are like I think 10 different sweets. So like excuse me, a heart-shaped sweet, a berry-shaped sweet, and so on and so forth. And then you have to spin on the spot. Your character has to very specifically spin on the spot, doing a twirl. And depending on the direction you do it, how long you do it for, and what time of day it is, because yes, that was also taken into account. How you do that will determine the form of alchemy that you get upon evolution. So that's fun. So the reason he seems to be using that in the top left triangle image there, I assume is meant to show that that represents the base form of it, and that it has multiple evolutions. So yes, the procedural thing may still be there, or possibly even just random forms. The Ring of Fire, I don't really know what that is, unless it's supposed to be like an energy source, perhaps. Then we go to the image on the top right, which shows the female female trainer from the trailer. I'm having a stroke. The female trainer from the trailer, looking out over the water and seeing some tornadoes, or what appear to be tornadoes, forming up in the distance, and going, "This is fine." Just like that house that's on fire and that one meme. This is fine. Presumably that would mean that the Pokemon is tied to the winds and waves or weather effects, whatever that ends up being. I don't think it's going to be the same as in previous games where you had Sunny Day, Rain Dance, and so on. I think this is an evolution of that concept. And then the bottom image shows that it shows Eternatus. Then what's that middle one called again? It's Ultra Necrozma and Terrapagos, however you say it. And the idea is these three represent sort of an outside force that sort of kicks off the entire story in their home region. And they're reptilian Pokemon. They all are responsible or part of the regional gimmick. So, for example, Eternatus is directly responsible for the Dynamax phenomenon. Not Eternatus, Ultra Necrozma is very specifically responsible for the Z moves and Z crystals. And then Terrapagos is the source of all terrestrialization energy, making it the progenitor of the terrestrial forms. Now, this appears to mean that the Pokemon that I'll call Konetsu moving forward appears to be related to the gimmick of this game. So it's very likely that the gimmick is going to define exactly what this Pokemon is and what it can do. I did offer a suggestion in my previous video, but I'm gonna retract that because I don't think we'll be getting I don't think this Pokemon is fully customizable. I think it's just going to be, you can mix it. I think you're still going to mix match types. I think it's going to depend on which of the margin research facilities you go to, what order. That's going to affect it. So, and the other thing as well is Alchemy also has this strange animation to it where it's sort of, because it's milk, it's living milk, so it's that crown-like thing on the top of its head. The little balls separate from it briefly as part of the animation and sort of reconnect. And it's just a fun little animation. But if you scroll down, this Pikachu was leaked a while back, and it appears to be the test for some kind of new regional phenomenon. Which I believe was previously called Margin and is now being called Netsu. It seems to be that the mechanic. So I still think that the fact that he chose Alchemy is because there are multiple forms of the evolution, but it could just be to represent the blobby animation, which is what Pikachu is doing in this animation here. Netsu appears to do strange things to a Pokemon's body, and we don't fully know what exactly it's meant to do. Again, this is huge spoilers for the game. I don't want to ruin anyone's excitement, but I really want to go through these leaks and just sort of give an opinion on them. So we think it may be that this could reference the full appearance of Netsu as a battle mechanic. And it could be that the bottom image simply shows that there is a Pokemon that powers it, or it could be multiple Pokemon. Given that there are 3 Pokemon in the bottom image, it could be there are multiple Konetsu Pokemon that all generate the energy used in the Winds and Waves universe. Let's see. So apparently some are hunting seed for their own usage. So the seed Pokemon is almost certainly an important story object or creature. So I think the seed Pokemon is still in it. I don't know if it's going to be quite as elaborate as I previously described it. But I'm sure it's going to be really fun to play around with still. And I think as well that rather than use the seed Pokemon as the basis for the procedural islands, I think what's going to happen is that it's gonna be central to the plot rather than the game itself. Um, but yeah, if we go down, um, so yeah, it's the seed Pokemon was inspired by Spore, but much more procedural. Um, and it's just an interesting concept. I am curious as to how um, the seed Pokemon will tie into the final game. I don't think they're gonna go as far as tying it um, into the progress of the story because that doesn't make any sense. Unless we're talking a Koraidon Miraidon situation where it's just a Pokemon that accompanies you the entire time, but you don't get to formally battle with it until a certain point in the story. I can kind of see them doing that, but I also kind of hope it is just another Pokemon we can catch and train. Like it's just a legendary that we get early on in the game. Um, but moving on, because I don't have all day to blab about this. We have the Wind and Waves legendary Pokemon. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna sip my drink there. Um, so in the game, apparently there's going to be a Wind Temple and a Wave Temple, which are two separate locations rather than um, separate to how like Sun and Moon did it, where there was the altar of the sun, the altar of the moon. Um, these temples appear to be they're probably on opposite ends of the map. One's like out in the deep ocean, another one's up in the sky. Um, and according to this, similar to Black and White, both of these Pokemon will play a key role in the story, and both will be in the game. I don't know if that means both will be available to capture, or if that means that perhaps you capture one and then battle the other, similar to how it works with Black and White. Um, but it's interesting. As well as that, the Terra Elite material seems to suggest that the Seed Pokemon has something to do with the Storm, the Wind and Wave legendary Pokemon. But I don't know if they'll go that far. I think they'll still tie it to those two Pokemon, but I don't think they're gonna make it into like a literal connection. I don't think we're looking at a Cosmog into Solgaleo and Lunala situation. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either if the Winds and Waves legendaries had something to do with this Netsu mechanic. Netsu, if you don't know, is meant to be this sort of winds, this weather slash aura mechanic. So depending on where you are in the story, in the map, certain Pokemon can have unique transformations. I don't know what triggers it, and I don't know if I assume certain moves and abilities are what set those auras going. Um, and I assume these are different to the weather effects because if you look at the typings, and we did this in a previous video, you've got there's fire, and I think there was fire, water, and rock, which do have weather associated with them. But there's also Psychic and Ghost, which do not have weather associated with them. So either there's new weather types incoming, all those two Pokemon are just gonna. I don't think these auras will give a Pokemon a boost. I think they're just gonna activate the mechanic specifically. So it won't be that you can stack Psychic Terrain and Rain on top of one of these Netsu mechanics. I think they're completely separate battle mechanics. But yeah, that more or less does it from me. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed listening and slightly watching this little gushing session, so to speak. If you have any comments or you'd like to ask a question, feel free to drop a like below. Please leave a comment, and yeah, let me know what you think, because I really enjoy reading comments. It genuinely makes my day when someone comments. But for now, I think I'm going to go get a drink. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Wind. Wave? Huh. I thought I programmed those in, but maybe not. Oh well, see you next time.